Welcome to the Clear Admit MBA Admissions Podcast. I'm Graham Richmond, and this is your wiretaps for Monday, August 29th, 2022. I'm joined by Alex Brown from Cornwall, England. Alex, how are things going this week?
Very good. Thank you, Graham.
So I guess you can now say that the admissions season for entering in the fall of 23 is now upon us, right? Do you want to walk us through why I'm saying that?
Yeah, this week are the first, this upcoming week is the first week for explicit deadlines for round one for MBA admissions at top programs. It's actually not US schools this week. They begin next week with a few early bird deadlines. But this week, Oxford side has its stage one deadline, as they call it, and ISB, India School of Business, which doesn't actually call its MBA program an MBA program.
It's a PGP, I think.
Its deadline is also actually, it seems to be on Sunday of this upcoming week. So we're definitely into round one. We've also seen on LiveWire activity regarding those folks applying Columbia Early Decision, right, and Columbia J-Term, which is their sort of condensed program that starts in January.
Yeah.
Things are building up.
I want to put you on the spot and ask you a question about Columbia. So you know that the way that Columbia works is you apply, it's kind of rolling. They have this early decision, but even within the early decision, it's rolling. Same for J-Term, which is when you start their program in January. And I had a question, which is people apply, and then they get invited to interview, and then they interview with an alum, and then usually they hear pretty rapidly after that. But I saw some chatter on LiveWire where someone was like, I had my interview, but I guess you can check online and see whether your interviewer has submitted their feedback, which is like the next step that has to happen before the admissions committee can make their normally rapid decision. And this candidate was like, I haven't seen my interviewer submit their thing. What do I do? And I don't know if you saw this on the site, but people were kind of chiming in with some advice about whether it makes sense to nudge the interviewer, which is kind of a tricky thing, right?
Tricky thing. I think what one respondent basically suggested, make sure you've sent the interviewer a thank you note, because by the process of sending them that thank you note, it will nudge them to submit their report. So yeah, it is a little bit tricky. You don't want to overburden the interviewer,
right?
But certainly make sure you've corresponded with them post-interview to thank them for the experience and so forth.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. You just send them a thank you. You don't need to, and if you've already sent them a thank you, I don't know. I think it's for me, it's up to the admissions committee to track down these reports, and so I don't know that there's much you could do other than, I guess, if it really goes on and on, would you write to the admissions team and just say, hey, really enjoyed my interview with, so-and-so. I see in the portal that it's been a couple weeks and, there doesn't seem to have been a report submitted. Is there anything that you need from me or something? But I don't know. It's a little tricky.
I think there's certainly a threshold point where it does make sense to contact the admissions committee directly.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so we digress, but this is the kind of stuff that I think LiveWire is so useful for. People, someone posted that question and a bunch of people chimed in with their own experiences, and including a student who's there now said, here's what happened to me. So just useful stuff. Over on the website, we've been continuing to publish admissions director Q&As. Over the past week, we ran Q&As on the Indian School of Business. So that's a good one if you're applying there, but make sure you read that before you submit the application on that first deadline that's coming up. And then we also did one with UC Irvine's Mirage School of Business. So those are kind of coming to an end. I think we've run most of them, and now we're going to get into some fun, real humans of current MBA students. So that's forthcoming on the site. And the other thing we ran was we did a piece on, this is part of our Real Numbers series. We did a piece on percentage of U.S. minorities at leading MBA programs. And this is an interesting one because I was looking and, a lot of the top schools, they're boasting, almost like half minorities, keeping in mind that this is only a percent of the U.S. population that's in their programs. But half seemed big to me. And then I looked into the finer print and they're actually counting, kind of all minorities, right? So it's, African-American, Hispanic, Asian American, people from of kind of Indian heritage as well, Native American. So it's everything. That's basically not white, I'm guessing, right? Is that how you see it? I mean, it's a little confusing to me how they do this sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, the better number to focus on if it was revealed is underrepresented minorities, because that's what the AdCom and the schools truly are going to care about. And this is kind of a similar issue with the international student component, because schools will report, 30% international, 35% or whatever. But within that group of students, there will be underrepresented international students and overrepresented international students. And we talk about this a lot on this podcast. But if you're from India, for example, you're going to fit into that overrepresented bucket. So not all international students are the same, and not all minority students will be the same in that sort of same effect.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I think some of the schools may publish this. I don't know. You have to dig into the class profiles and see, but it's at minimum now they are all coordinated. There's kind of a federal reporting statistics that they have to use now, I think. So that's where these numbers are coming from. But it is interesting to see. And you're right. I mean, it's a great analogy with international students because, not all kind of international students are going to be equally represented in the population.
Right.
So, and we'll get into that in a moment because we got some candidates this week that are, kind of overrepresented and some that are under potentially. So, other than that, the only thing I wanted to mention before we get into the wiretaps portion of the podcast is that we have 3 events coming up in September. These are our essay workshops where we sit down with admissions directors and talk about their essay questions and really grill them on like what they're looking for, why do they have these questions, in the case of specific schools and how they go about reading them, et cetera. So on September 14th, that's a Wednesday, it'll be at noon Eastern. We're sitting down with admissions folks from Berkeley, Yale, Chicago, Wharton, and Cornell. And then literally the next 2 weeks after that, we have events as well. So on the 21st and the 28th, and the other schools taking part are, again, it's a lot of great schools: Columbia, Dartmouth, INSEAD, LBS, Duke, Georgetown, Carnegie Mellon, Texas, UNC. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We've done these before. Many of you tuning in have probably already attended one in the past, but please come on out. Really good if you're starting to work on applications, either that are due later in the cycle or even round 2, right? So, and you can sign up by going to bit.ly/clearadmitfall. And that's all lowercase, all one word. So that's all I have, Alex, for this week. I guess we can get into the candidates. I mean, people can always email us if they have questions and want to chat by writing to info@clearadmit.com. Use the subject line wiretaps. But did you have any other housekeeping or interesting news items, Alex, that you wanted to talk about before we move on?
No, I mean, the only other thing is the webinar we have tonight scheduled for Clear Admit Plus.
Yes.
And stuff. So I'm excited for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I am too. And Clear Admit Plus is, I think it's just such a great service that we're offering to people. And, part of it is this monthly webinar. And we had a fun time last time out with our inaugural group of candidates coming in. So this will be, I think, a slightly bigger group now. But we'll see how it goes. It should be a lot of fun.
Very good.
All right. So let's move on. And let's get into wiretaps candidate number 1. So this is an ApplyWire entry that we received. This candidate wants to start school in the fall of 23. They've been working in investment banking and private equity. They've got 6 schools on their target list, and those schools are Columbia, Dartmouth, Kellogg, Chicago, Wharton, and Yale. They would like to get into consulting after business school, so a bit of a pivot there. And they've got Bain, BCG, and McKinsey on their list. Their GPA is a 3.5. I believe they mentioned that was earned at a decent top 5 public undergrad institution. They have a GRE score of 312. They've been working for 7 years. And they also mentioned they're kind of Eastern European descent. Well, they're dual citizen with the U.S. and with this Eastern European country, which they did not name. They actually went to high school in Eastern Europe. And they've also talked about their goals. They want to get into MBB to get some operational experience and then pivot back into finance in a private equity kind of operations type role. So I'm going to leave it there, Alex. And I know we had some dialogue with this candidate, or at least you and I weighed in a little bit on their candidacy on the site. I don't know if they responded yet, but what do you think of this candidacy?
Yeah, just as you bring out that remark, Graham, they want to get into consulting to do operational experience. Just seems a little bit of a stretch, right? Consultants advise on the folks that actually have to do the operational experience, more so. But anyway, I do actually get what they're saying in terms of their career path and their goals. But this is a classic candidacy for a couple of different reasons. One is, this potentially is an underrepresented international student, right? They're from an Eastern European country. And by that very nature, their sort of life experience and so forth before they came to the States, etc., is going to sort of set them apart a little bit and bring in some sort of different experiences from that regard. And that's why coming from an underrepresented country can be advantageous in the admissions process. It's about what does that mean to the candidate personally, and how does that sort of impact their ability to contribute to the conversations in the classroom and so on and so forth. So in that regard, very good. I gotta say, sounds like in the brief bits of content that we see on ApplyWire that their work experience is very good. Their extracurriculars also look very good, and so on and so forth. But they have this really relatively weak GRE score, right? At 312. I mean, it is relatively off the radar. I mean, it's out of the range for most of the top programs.
Yeah.
So a common refrain you sometimes hear, that's a bit of an oxymoron. Sometimes you hear from candidates that say, I'm hoping that the quality of my life and professional experiences is so strong that AdCom will look past this one aspect of my candidacy. In this case, it's the lower GRE. Mm-hmm. And my response to that is, why risk it? You don't have to apply in round one because, again, you're a little bit more underrepresented than certainly overrepresented. Therefore, if you're overrepresented, being in round one is going to be more critical. There's no admissions advantage for this candidate to be in round one. So try to fix this one massive outlier, and don't run the risk that this one particular issue is going to bring down the overall candidacy where everything else in the profile looks really super interesting. So if you imagine, if this was someone with a 325 GRE instead of a 312, with everything else that they've got, you'd be like, yes, absolutely, M7 or bust.
Yeah.
As long as they put together a great application strategy and pick the right stories and so on and so forth. But this 312...
It's a red flag.
Absolutely, they've got to deal with it.
Yeah, to me, it's a red flag, and I do worry that they are taking that approach that you talked about, which is, oh, well, I have such an interesting background that's going to... But the issue is that the components of MBA admissions are somewhat compartmentalized. It's sort of like you have to meet the threshold academically to sort of be considered, right? And so I'm worried that, they're also a little bit out of school. They're 7 years out now. And so sometimes you worry about, wow, how rusty are they if they're not performing well on the test? And the other thing I would say is, if I'm an admissions reader and I see this 312, the first thing I'm going to look and see is, oh, maybe they took it like 5 times. They're a terrible standardized test taker, and they just, they gave it their effort and it hasn't worked out. Okay, they can write an optional essay about that. But if this is the only time that they've taken the test, that would be a red flag as well. Because I'd say, well, they know that our average at all these schools they're applying to is, 325 or 323 or whatever it is. And they're more than 10 points below that. Why haven't they taken this test again? At least to, put in the effort. And so I'm worried, and I absolutely agree with you. I would wait, apply in round 2, I also, the one thing I would say is I'm not as convinced that their current outside activities are that stunning. It's hard to know. They didn't provide a lot of detail. They did serve on the board of a big charity for a year, but everything else seemed like it was maybe college years. So they've been out for 7 years. I kind of wanted a little bit more information there. And the reason I mention that is just because it underlines even more the idea of like, okay, maybe the extracurriculars aren't stellar. Well, that would be okay if they had the 325 GMAT, 3.5 GPA, and all this great work experience and a unique life experience in Eastern Europe. But it starts to all add up. You got the low GRE, maybe not so great current outside activities. Hard to know, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
No, I think that's a fair point. The other thing that we don't know is if let's say they did only take this GRE one time, what effort did they put into it? If it was a question of, everything else looks really good, so they kind of winged it to get the GRE test done. I mean, that's just really going to come back and haunt them. So at the end of the day, make sure, every element of your application is as strong as possible, and you put the due effort into every element of the application. Now, if it turns out that this 312 is the maximum score after a couple of attempts, 2 or 3 attempts, then so be it. And they're probably going to have to dip into the next tier down, the top 16 or whatever, to get a little bit more of a bite. But don't let this test score eliminate you from the programs you should be at. I guess that's the overarching sort of point here.
And the last thing I'll add is, well, none of these companies require it, and they actually always say, "Oh no, it's not a big deal." Sometimes the GRE or GMAT score can be a factor, I think, when you're applying for MBB jobs. So, like for example, I was told at Wharton, I had a really high GMAT score. I was told, put that GMAT score on your CV because McKinsey's going to give you an interview since you have such a high. And it was true. I got an interview, and I had no other qualification. I mean, I had no background in consulting. And so I think, I would not want to go into the MBB recruitment process with a really low GRE. Again, not that they're going to require it, but it's like, if it's not on your resume, then they know, it must be below some of these thresholds. So anyway, I would get that taken care of if I were this candidate and applying round 2.
What you don't know, Graham, is if you'd have got that interview without placing your GMAT on the resume.
No, of course not.
Correlation, causation, that's something that we learn a lot about. But absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
All right. So I want to thank that person for submitting. Hopefully they can, take the steps that we're recommending and get an application in the second round. Let's move on, though, and talk about Wiretaps candidate number 2. So this is a candidate who they have, I guess they're going to be applying this year. I think you had some back and forth with them on this. It says 2024, so I'm a little confused by this one, but we'll get into that in a second. For now, they've been working as an investment analyst with an SWF, which is a sovereign wealth fund. I looked that up. We can talk more about that. They want to get into asset management, including hedge funds, after business school. And they currently have a 700 on the GMAT. They do intend to retake it with an aim of securing something closer to 750. Their GPA is a 3.1. It was earned at a top U.S. state school. And they said there are no extenuating circumstances. They just have to own that 3.1. They didn't do as well as they could have. They've been working for 5 years, again, all on investment side at a very large sovereign wealth fund. The last thing I should mention is that, where is it? Yeah, they mentioned that they are from the GCC, which for those of you who are enjoying all these acronyms today, GCC stands for the Gulf Cooperation Council. So it's it's kind of an economic, kind of a regional union that it comprises, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. So that's where they're from. They didn't say, did they say where they are now, Alex? Because is that where they are now too?
I'm assuming that's where they are, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what do you make of this? I mean, they have, the 700, 310 is a little bit ho-hum, and I actually forgot to mention the schools that they're looking at are Berkeley, Harvard, MIT, NYU, and Yale. So top 16 schools. What do you think of this candidacy?
Yeah, I mean, again, this candidate needs to retake the GMAT. A 700 is a decent score, but it's below the averages of the programs they're targeting. Their GPA is also below the averages of the schools they're targeting, more significantly below, actually. So they're going to have to do something about this combination of numbers to be more appealing from that portion of their candidacy. They know that. They're planning to retake the GMAT, and they're going to, target sort of obviously as high as possible, but sort of hit around that 740, 750 range. And if they're able to do that, I do think that makes a material difference in this candidate's case, because again, that GPA is going to make AdCom a little bit uncomfortable. So if they can come back with a really strong GMAT, that certainly will help. Their professional experience, again, it looks really good. Working on the investment side at sovereign wealth funds and so on and so forth. So we've got to assume that their work experience looks really strong. They're a board member and a volunteer at a local non-profit that helps children's education. AdCom love that kind of stuff. Well, we all love that kind of stuff, right? So
Right.
they're giving back. They're doing the right sorts of things. Hopefully they're doing it for all the right reasons too, not simply to look good in front of AdCom. So that sort of genuine sort of personality, hopefully that comes through the application. So I think, retaking the GMAT is an important move in this candidate's part. I'm a little bit, hesitant in terms of, they're from the GCC region, as you pointed out what that means. I mean, I've heard the acronym before, but I have to admit I went to Google just to confirm which countries are involved. So, is that overrepresented? Is it underrepresented? Yes, I would agree it's probably a little bit underrepresented. Depending on, I suppose, the overall heritage of the candidate might sort of come into play a little bit too there. So we seem to be on a bit of a theme this week. We talk about overrepresented, underrepresented, whether it's minorities and whether it's international students,
Right,
and so on and so forth. So they might have a little bit of leeway going into the second round. If they are able to retake the GMAT in time for a couple of these round one applications, like Sloan, which is notoriously at the end of the month of September, I think, then that might be worth sort of prioritizing Sloan into round one if they get their GMAT retaken in time. But I think, again, from a professional standpoint and extracurricular standpoint in this case, there looks to be a lot to like here.
Yeah, and I think I was confusing them with another entry, but they seem, they put 2024, so I think they legitimately are not going to be applying until maybe next season, right? So they only have 5 years of work experience. I mean, that's plenty, but it's not like it's too many, right? So they could, so maybe they are on a kind of 1 year plan here, and they have time to get the GMAT score up. I do really find it interesting, like the work they're doing. A sovereign wealth fund is, it's not something you see every day, which is basically a state-owned investment fund. So, but it's just kind of interesting, and they're in an interesting part of the world.
They might have bought Newcastle United.
Yes, and so so it's just like an interesting profile, and I agree. I wrote this to them on the site, but I was kind of thinking about how, gosh, when you have a low GPA, which a 3.1 is, it's a B, it's not terrible or anything, but it's below the average by a chunk, as you said, at all these top schools. And so when you have that, the best way to sort of, make that was then, this is now argument is to come in with a really stellar test result. So hopefully they can boost that. I have a lot of confidence in their ability to get into some top programs if they can move the meter on the GMAT score so that it serves as a little bit of a counter to the GPA.
Yeah, no, very good. So, completely agree. And if they are waiting till next season, then whether they're underrepresented or overrepresented, just line it up and get the applications in round one.
Yeah. Totally. That makes sense. They have plenty of time there. So I want to thank them for submitting their post and for being a member of the community here. Always great to see these profiles come in. Let's move on and talk about Wiretaps candidate number 3. So this is another ApplyWire entry, again, candidate targeting the fall of 23. So they're actually, actively applying right now. And they have Harvard, INSEAD, LBS, MIT, Stanford, Chicago Booth, and Wharton on their list. They've been working in consulting. They're actually with a Big Four management consulting firm. And they're located in Dubai. So we got that GCC theme that continues to thread here in this entry. They'd love to go back there after business school. The GMAT score is a 740 and the GPA is a 3.78. They've got 4 years of work experience. They're hoping to use the MBA to kind of continue to do consulting, but maybe with more of a focus on nonprofit and social impact type work. They actually, in the long term, want to start their own impact consulting firm. So that's something they're thinking about. And they indicate that there's a strong demonstration of an interest in that and maybe an aptitude for it based on all of their extracurriculars over the past 4 years. One other wrinkle as we talk about ethnicity and international and underrepresented, all this stuff, this person says they are ethnically Indian, but they have worked for 3 years in Dubai. And again, they intend to return to the GCC region after business school. So, yeah, what do you make of this, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, this is an international candidate who's overrepresented coming from India. You would argue that because they've had some international experience, that sort of helps step up.
Yeah.
From that, sort of helps them stand out a little bit from a large group. I would continue to argue that regardless, target round 1.
Yes.
So that so that whether you are considered overrepresented or not, it matters less when you're in round 1 and you're being considered before that bucket or whatever gets filled. So do that. Obviously, from an accounting stats profile, as you like to call it, excellent. 740 GMAT, 378 GPA.
Yeah.
So that 378, they've proven over 4 years they're committed to their academics. Love that. 740 GMAT proves that they're wicked smart. Very good. So that's good. Management consulting is reasonably standard. Pre-business school experience for top programs. So that's very good. What I really do like, however, is it looks like they too have committed significantly to something that they're passionate about in their extracurriculars over the last several years. We don't know what that is, but I really like that commitment. And what I really like about it is it has some relationship to do with what they plan to do in the long run.
Yeah.
So that, to me, forms the ingredients of what could be a very powerful narrative that further helps them distinguish themselves and helps them stand out from, again, what will be a very strong pool of candidates, not only from that region, but from exactly where they're originally from and so forth. So a lot to like here, Graham. Target round 1, and yeah, I really do love the extracurriculars and how that's helping them sort of lead them to their long-term goal.
Yeah, and they do mention in their comments that they are on track for round 1 at Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Booth, Sloan, LBS, and INSEAD. I think that's all of their schools. So they're, and they actually, I should mention, they left a really nice comment after we had some back and forth on their candidacy on the website. They actually left a little note that just said, thanks for a fantastic site. ClearAdmit has helped a lot while putting together these applications. So that's always nice to hear. I don't know if that's why you picked them, but it's an interesting candidacy, and I think you're right. Even though I would argue that an Indian working out of country, whether it's some Indians come to the U.S., do a master's in engineering, and then work in the U.S., or in this case, this person studied in India probably and then went to Dubai and has been working in the Big Four consulting there. I think it is an advantage, but I still agree with you that applying in the first round is still going to be important because they're still kind of lumped in the bucket of Indian, which is overrepresented. So, yeah, but it's an interesting profile, and I do agree. I mean, the numbers are stellar, and so I would be really shocked if they don't end up with at least a couple of acceptances on this list of schools, even though it is a really it's an interesting list, by the way. I noted that it's kind of like an M7 list, but with INSEAD and London Business School. So it's kind of the international candidates M7 type list, if you will.
This list makes sense, assuming the candidate is going back to Dubai straight after their MBA, right?
Yeah.
Or at least in their path of direction, their goal is to return to Dubai.
Right.
So there's no geographic concentration in the choice of programs. You've got the top 2 programs out of Europe, and you've got 5 of the top 7 programs out of the United States. Now, Graham, one quick question. They have gone all in M7 because, again, London Business School, INSEAD would be sort of in that same bracket. Do they need to hedge at all and add 1 or 2 from the next tier? The only reason why I ask is, let's say they are considered overrepresented, and let's say for whatever reason they struggle with M7 in round 1. If they come back in round 2 at top 16, it's gotten tougher to get in if they're considered overrepresented. So I've seen this year on year, overrepresented candidates that only focus on the best programs in round 1. They might get waitlisted, they might not quite get in. They readjust in round 2, and again, they get waitlisted and don't get in because of this issue of things. So the rule becomes always have something a little bit softer in that first round group of schools, just to make sure that you've got something in the bag. I
personally, I think they're going to, if I were thinking about the difficulty level of the programs on their list, I think that given what we know about them, they're going to get some offers. I'm not saying that Harvard or Stanford or Wharton is going to be a slam dunk. But I think, they've got Booth on the list. They've got INSEAD and LBS, which, you look at the stats in terms of GPAs, GMATs and stuff. They match up really well with those schools as being kind of above average. So I think they're going to be okay. I mean, the one school that does come to mind is NYU Stern, only because they have a campus in, now I'm going to get this wrong. I can't remember if it's in Abu Dhabi or it's in the GCC somewhere that they have a kind of campus. And
now that you know where GCC is, you can just make those connections.
Yeah. And the other thing is that I think LBS and INSEAD also have campuses or programs in that region too. So I understand why those 2 are on the list for sure. But I if I'm this candidate, I roll the dice, go with the schools they have. I'm not worried about having like a safety. Like I think they're going to be okay. I mean, obviously in a perfect world, I'll get to see their essays and understand like, have they pitched themselves in an appropriate way? But assuming that they do everything right, I don't think they need to add more but it's a lot of schools already. That's the other thing I kind of have in mind. They're already submitting 7 in round 1.
Yeah. So. No, very good. I just want to bring the point up just for others that if you're only targeting your best programs in round 1 with the thought going back round 2 with the next tier down, if you're overrepresented, that can actually backfire a little bit.
Yeah, very good point. And I think you often see it with people who maybe don't have quite the stunning stats. They're pretty good, and they're like, I'm going to go, but then they end up with, as you say, with some wait lists and then nothing in the second round. So, all right, well, we've done it. Alex, this was cool because I think we got to talk about a lot of kind of international candidates, and the first guy's Eastern European coming, goes to the U.S., and then you've got this last one we talk about where it's an Indian living in Dubai, and then the other one was already in the GCC, and we got to learn some acronyms this week. So thanks for picking these out. Some nice connections and good advice as always. And we'll do it again in 1 week's time if you're willing.
Yeah, very good. Best of luck, everyone. Take care. Stay safe.